So here are the guys that did not practice on Wednesday. Miles Sanders, hopefully he'll be good to go with the knee injury. If not, you prefer Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell?
I would prefer Gainwell.
They're not playing the Giants.
All right, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
There you go.
That's true, they're not playing the Giants. Alvin Kamara is dealing with a quad injury. Hopefully he'll be okay. James Conner, illness. Hopefully he'll be okay. Kenneth Walker has been playing through the ankle injury. Should be out there. And Antonio Gibson, if he's out, we know the storyline there. We'll talk about Brian Robinson in a second. The running backs are limited from Wednesday's practice. And again, hopefully we have some updates for you on Thursday. You got Aaron Jones, which is certainly a situation to monitor. We'll talk about that one when it comes to the Packers running backs. Austin Eckler dealing with a knee injury, should be okay. McCaffrey's been limited almost every week. Same with Jordan Mason, now dealing with a hamstring injury for the 49ers. And then Damian Harris still dealing with that thigh injury. All right, let's get a little bit more into the Eagles' backfield here. So Miles Sanders had a miserable game last week against the Cowboys with the quarterback change. Had a fumble, just did not look great. We thought it was going to be a big game for him, but it was not. So now you're taking on a Saints defense that's been pretty good against the run as well. So Dave, you're a little bit out on Miles Sanders. Heath, you obviously have a little bit more trust in him. So tell us why.
Well, because of all the other things that are happening at running back. There aren't 12 running backs that I'd like to rank as a top 12 running back, but I do think with Gardner Minshew, it was a bad week last week. This Saints defense has probably been better against the pass than they have been against the run as of late. I think he's in line for 15-plus touches as long as he's okay. If he misses practice on Thursday or Friday, a lot of times with these guys, I'll move them behind the Thursday's backs, but I'm not going to move behind Hassan Haskins. I'm not going to move behind Tony Pollard. Ezekiel Elliott's already ahead of him, so I've not really adjusted him. If he's not practicing Thursday or Friday, I would drop him down a little bit more, but I expect he's going to be okay. Wednesday practice reports don't concern me that much.
Do you think it's going to weigh on the Eagles brass on whether or not they trust him in high leverage situations because of the fumble last week?
No,
he's
their guy. He's their guy.
I think the matchup's tough. I think the Saints are going to give him a game, and I'm a little bit nervous about just how much work he's going to get. So I've got him as a number 2 running back this week.
I do think it's worth noting that they're clearly concerned about their starters going into the playoffs. They just lost Lane Johnson, so the offensive line not as good, although, as we've seen from the Eagles, they miss a guy, they plug another guy in, their offensive line's still good, the system is still good. Clearly Gardner Minshew showed you that. So there are some things, pros and cons here, but I wonder if, because Hurts, shoulder injury, let's be cautious. Sanders, knee injury, let's be cautious. They do have guys behind him. So for you, it's Gainwell. For you, it's Gainwell also?
It is Gainwell.
See, for me, I look at it this way. Boston Scott is the running downs guy. I don't think Kenneth Gainwell's role will change, because we've seen when Scott has gone in and out of games, when Sanders has gone in and out of games.
Yeah, Scott's
been the running downs guy, and I think he'd be the goal line guy. Now, I do think that Gainwell's touches will improve, and obviously he's the better player than Boston Scott. It's just a matter of who will get those scoring chances and those high-level touches that we talk about. And so it's probably a situation you'd like to avoid if it's not a guy. But I think if you tell me right now, no Miles Sanders versus Hassan Haskins, the backups, I would probably take my chances on maybe both those guys.
We're just not going to know that.
Over Haskins.
Right.
Well, if he misses practice Thursday and you don't want to play Haskins, you can wait if you have other options at play as well.
Yeah.
It's not like Hassan Haskins in a great situation, without the guys around him. But again, that's another story to continue. Hopefully Miles Sanders does play, though, against the Saints. If there is no Antonio Gibson against the Browns, how much do we love Brian Robinson? Because I love him if he doesn't have Antonio Gibson there.
You love him a lot. And he's already been taking over a lot of the rushing work away from Antonio Gibson. So it was almost like Antonio Gibson was like a complementary piece to the run offense. He would always catch 2 or 3 passes. If he's out of the way, Robinson could be in line for all the carries and maybe even 2 or 3 catches in the game. And it's a good match against Cleveland. Their run defense has been terrible. The Browns could the Commanders could literally just ride Brian Robinson all the way. Easy to start him over Miles Sanders. Somebody who would move up in my rankings, probably closer to 15th as running back.
I do think that he will have a ton of work and he'll do very well running the ball. I'm not sure Gibson being gone will affect him in the passing game at all. We saw last week Jonathan Williams had 3 targets in last week's game. Brian Robinson has 2 targets in his last 2 games combined. So I don't know that he necessarily sees a big boost in the passing game. I think he's the same guy right in that low end number 2 range, maybe a couple more carries.
Williams had arguably their most fun play last week on where Carson Wentz was getting sacked and he flipped the ball out to him. So he could obviously be the pass catching guy. That's a great call, Heath. In terms of the Packers, so A.J. Dillon has been much more productive than Aaron Jones for the last month. And part of this, I think, is because Aaron Jones has been playing with this ankle injury. And so he's starting, I think, to realize maybe he should not be playing as much. Maybe the Packers are starting to realize that as well. He didn't finish the game against Miami. So practice on a limited basis on Wednesday. For me, I'm trusting Dillon over Jones at this point. I don't think it's a big stretch. Are you guys with me?
I've been with you since last week. I had Dillon ahead of Jones last week and certainly agree. Now, I think I have Dillon ranked a little too high. He just doesn't get enough total yardage. But if he ends up playing without Aaron Jones, you're looking at him getting a ton of work, and this Vikings run defense isn't anything to write home about.
I was more concerned about Jones before he got a limited practice in on Wednesday. A lot of guys miss practice on Wednesday. We've talked about it a lot already. The fact that he was a limited participant on Wednesday makes me think Aaron Jones is probably going to play.
But
and
he's
A.J.
not right,
Dillon
though.
he's not, but A.J. Dillon has 11 carries for 36 yards in each of his last 2 games. A.J. Dillon's not been anything special either the last couple of weeks. He's just scored touchdowns.
But he's getting those high-level touches, you
Right.
know, and when they're getting in the red zone, they're running more than they're throwing, and he's still catching passes too, which is something that's encouraging for him, you know, which we didn't see in the beginning part of the season. He's got at least 2 catches in 4 straight games, 3 in 3 straight games,
Right.
or 3 of the 4 games, you know, so he's almost doing a better job than Aaron Jones in that regard.
Well, I mean, it was just a week ago, week 15, that Aaron Jones had 126 yards and a touchdown. Like, it's one bad game for Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon wasn't better than him last week or 2 weeks ago.
But he's been over the last month.
Right.
3 games ago, those when this started
Right.
to happen for him,
Right.
this foot
He's
ankle
been
injury.
playing more.
Yes.
That's really what's got it going, and then Jones getting hurt on top of it hasn't helped his case. You have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, it's just it's not great, you know, when
no,
Aaron
yeah,
Jones
yeah,
has
no.
been
I've had Aaron Jones top 12 all season, so I've downgraded him too. Just not quite as
yeah,
much.
it's been the majority of the last month has not been good for Aaron Jones. Let's get to the big story for the Raiders here. So, running backs obviously usually matter more to us, but clearly the NFL big story is the Raiders benching Derek Carr. Now we know what this really is more about. It's more about the contract situation for next year, not about his play, because obviously Jarrett Stidham is not better than Derek Carr, not going to be better than Derek Carr. So you can get Derek Carr out of your lineups if you're considering him more super flex 2 quarterback leagues. You're not trusting Jarrett Stidham. The bigger story for us is what does this mean for the pass catchers here? So Heath, I'll start with you. Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Matt Collins. You want to throw it in there? Who do you trust? Who do you avoid?
I think everything is subject to change with the information we get over the next couple of days about who is going to play and how much for the Raiders in this game. And it sounded like listening to Devontae Adams talk after this decision had been made, he was still planning on playing in this game. He still said, we've got to finish the year the best that we can. So I'm expecting him to be a full-time player, which makes him a low-end, borderline number 2 wide receiver. I do think Stidham is an enormous downgrade for the wide receiver and for Darren Waller. I still think there's a good chance in a 3 wide receiver league. I'm trusting Devontae Adams.
Yes.
Not the same for Waller.
Yes, not in a 2 receiver league, though. For me, it's not the same. Waller's outside my top 12 with the tight end spot. Dave, in terms of Josh Jacobs, though, does this change things for you?
It does. It makes me nervous about just how much Jacobs is going to play. Are they going to look toward the future? And you heard Josh McDaniels say that. They want to take a look at other young players. That's what his excuse was for starting Jarrett Stidham. Could that extend to Jacobs, who talked trash about McDaniels after their game last week? Does that mean that he sees fewer carries? Does that mean that he doesn't even play? I don't want to scare anybody. I'm starting him as a number 2 fantasy running back, but usually he's a number 1. Usually he's got the opportunity to get 20 touches, hit the end zone, be awesome for fantasy. This week I'm not quite as sure, A, because of that, and oh, by the way, they're playing the 49ers, toughest matchup on the board for running backs at this point.
Just sucks that you get to your fantasy championship and you're not going to potentially have Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, and Josh Jacobs. And look, you know, again, Jacobs would probably be a little bit of a downgrade no matter what because of the defense that they're playing, as you alluded to, but yeah, very, very frustrating situation. All right, some quarterback injuries that we're keeping an eye on. The 3 big ones would be Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa. Tua not expected to play in the concussion protocol. Jalen Hurts, however, not practicing on Wednesday. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. Trevor Lawrence should be good to go. Mike White, good to go, as you see there, practicing in full. And Colt McCoy back for the Cardinals as well, practicing in full. Aaron Rodgers should also be able to play, dealing with the knee injury. So the story that we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks is the Eagles with Gardner Minshew last week against the Cowboys. 26 fantasy points. Dave, what's the expectation for him in Week 17 against the Saints?
It's lower. I think this is a tougher matchup for him. 19 or fewer fantasy points to every quarterback the Saints have faced this year, except for 3, and that includes a miracle 21 points to Tom Brady in Week 13. I've got him outside of my top 12. I don't mind if you're starting him as a replacement for Jalen Hurts. I would trust Mike White ahead of him. I do think Mike White has a little bit of a higher ceiling than Minshew.
I think the matchup might be worse for Mike White, the way the Seahawks have given up production in the running game and not as much in the passing game lately. I think they're both low-end starters, QB 11 and QB 12 for me. I don't really want to start them over anyone that I've been starting over the last couple months. But if I need an injury replacement for Jalen Hurts, if I've been streaming because I lost Lamar Jackson, these are easily the top 2 guys that I would go with.
The reason I think Minshew's still safe, and obviously it's a tough matchup, is it's this Eagles offense, you know, and some of the teams that they faced have obviously not been very stellar in terms, you know, like getting the Browns last week in the snow and Deshaun Watson, you know. So I think Minshew, the way that he played last week, you take off 6 points. So, you know, 20 points 20. I think is well within reason. So that puts him in the range. I think we're all where we're talking about. In terms of the pass catchers, look, we're going to start A.J. Brown. We're going to start Devontae Smith. We're going to start Dallas Goedert. I don't think we should be too worried about them. As you see here, you know, you'll see we like them all to varying degrees.
You like Smith more than Brown?
I do. I think what we've seen the last, you know, basically the majority of the time since Dallas Goedert's been out, his targets have been better than A.J. Brown, and the production last week was better as well. But clearly you're starting both these guys if you have the ability to do so. And Dallas Goedert, same thing. Low end starter, I think, is probably the best way to put it, just because the Saints have been great against tight ends across the board. The Lamar Jackson story is pretty clear at this point. It's not about anything else. If Lamar plays, you're starting him, I think, at least as a low-end starter. It's really more about the tight end, because Mark Andrews has been an absolute disaster with Tyler Huntley. We already saw one game against the Steelers where he was bad. So if there is no Lamar Jackson, if Tyler Huntley starts again, Heath, are you starting Mark Andrews?
I am hoping that I don't have to. I would rather start Tyler Higbee. I would rather start Dawson Knox. I do still have Mark Andrews inside of my top 12 tight ends, just because I don't have 12 tight ends that I like. And I still don't think that it's impossible for him to get into the end zone at some point. He's giving you about 7 or 8 fantasy points without touchdowns. I think he has a chance to possibly get into the end zone. But again, I'd rather start Higbee. I'd rather start Knox.
In his last 4 games, he's had 9 or fewer fantasy points in each one. So
he hasn't scored a touchdown in a billion years.
He's had like maybe one good throw from Tyler Huntley, and now he's taking on a Steelers team who he's never scored against in his career. And the Steelers have only allowed 4 tight ends to have at least 10 PPR points against them all this season. Tough matchup, bad quarterback, been playing bad lately. I don't see a good path for Mark Andrews. I'm sitting him. I agree with Heath about Dawson Knox. I'd start Njoku over Mark Andrews. I'd start Noah Fant, who's been scoring lately, over Mark Andrews.
I can't do that, but I would consider Tyler Conklin in PPR just based on the targets that he's going to get from Mike White in the best matchup on the table. So, it's a matter of, Juwan Johnson to me is similar to Noah Fant. You're hoping for a touchdown for those guys. Taysom Hill, you've talked about this quite a bit.
Non-PPR for sure.
It's just it's a tough go. So hopefully Mark Andrews can find the end zone or at least play well with Tyler Huntley. But we wish to see Lamar Jackson back there for him. The Dolphins again not going to have Tua Tagovailoa dealing with the concussion, so it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. So really, again, this is not about what Teddy is. He's super flex 2-quarterback option if you're stuck, but still. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, who are we trusting, who are we avoiding?
You're starting Tyreek Hill. You know what the upside is, and he's had a huge target share from Teddy Bridgewater since Bridgewater had been playing, or while they had been playing together. It's Waddle that you worry a little bit more about. But you see his upside. You see his ability. You saw it last week to take a short pass and take it all the way to the house. You can't get away from Waddle as a number 2 wide receiver.
In terms of the other wide receivers that we're looking at here, Waddle, Tyreek Hill, at least they're healthy, so you look at the injuries at the position. Amari Cooper did not practice with the hip injury. Christian Watson, we'll talk about that with the hip injury as well, did not practice. There was some thought that Deebo Samuel was going to practice on Wednesday, and he might have gotten some work in, but they still listed him as DNP. Tyler Lockett did get some work in with the finger injury, but still listed as DNP. Johnson's been dealing with this toe injury. We'll find out what the status is there, and then the rest of these guys you could probably just avoid. In terms of the Packers, let's just stay on this list here. If Watson plays, must-start guy, easy?
He's a number 2 wide receiver. I would start him over Waddle, and they did get good news. Matt LaFleur said he will practice on a limited basis today.
Okay, so trending in the right direction. That's unbelievable news because the matchup is fantastic. But in the unlikely scenario that he's out, who do we like? Alan Lazard, Romeo Doubs? Do we trust either of those guys?
I would trust Lazard. That's the guy who was Aaron Rodgers' dude before Watson became Aaron Rodgers' dude. And this crushes Aaron Rodgers if there is no Christian Watson. You can move Aaron Rodgers out of your lineup if he doesn't play.
I don't know if I agree with that, though, just because the Vikings have been so absolutely 1,000% horrible against quarterbacks. So I don't think it crushes him. It obviously hurts his ceiling. But I don't think I wouldn't necessarily sprint away from Aaron Rodgers if there is no Christian Watson, because I do think that they're going to have to throw. This game could be a track meet based on how these teams are.
So if there's no Watson, rank them. Rodgers, White, Minshew.
Oh, he's behind those guys.
He's behind those guys for me if Watson plays.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean,
I've got him ahead because of, it is a good matchup. There should be a good opportunity.
He's played some really bad defenses over the last season, and he just has not produced fantasy points. He threw the ball 38 times last year at 238 yards.
If you throw 38 times against the Vikings, though,
you should be able to find 25.
He threw 34 against them in week 1 and threw for 195 yards.
He didn't have Lazard in that game, and Watson had a huge drop as well. And the Vikings defense was much better in week 1 than it certainly is right now. The limited wide receivers really the ones to look at here. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Chris Olave. So Olave, we'll see if he comes back. That could impact Rashid Shaheed if you're looking at somebody as a desperation play. For the Broncos, though, the big story is Jerry Jeudy started practice yesterday, left in the middle of practice, thankfully came back. So hopefully he's fine. Jeudy, Sutton, Greg Dulcich didn't practice with a hamstring injury. Dave, you're a little bit concerned about Sutton. You have him to sit for our start-sit conversation, but Jerry Jeudy must-start guy?
Judy's a must-start guy. Think of him as a top 20-ish type of wide receiver, maybe even top 15. You've got to be a little skittish because of the quarterback situation there, but Judy's been able to make fantasy magic even with Russell Wilson playing for him.
You like Cortland Sutton this week?
I do not like him as long as Jerry Jeudy plays. I think he is in that boom-bust number 3 conversation. Like Romeo Doubs without Christian Watson would be in the same range for me as Cortland Sutton, but he's certainly not a must-start. And even if I'm starting 3 wide receivers, I'm hoping I have 3 better options.
Got 7 targets last week, did get Jalen Ramsey, so got the respect of getting the number 1 cornerback for the Rams, but we'll see how things go against the Chiefs. We know the Chiefs bleed fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. I'm a little bit more optimistic, but again, still a number 3 receiver. Tight end injuries that we're looking at here, you got again Dulcich, who's out with the dealing with the hamstring injury, did not practice on Wednesday. Noah Fant, something got to keep an eye on there. It's been more of a maintenance thing for him, though, with that knee injury. Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, keep an eye on that situation. Maybe you need a streamer if Henry does play because the Dolphins have been bad against tight ends. And then you got Cade Otton. But let's just tie in really the Seattle receiving corps here because getting a lot of questions. So Lockett, Heath, if he plays, right back to him.
He's a boom-bust number 2 wide receiver. Will be in that right around wide receiver 20 for me.
Lockett, if he's out and Goodwin plays, any interest?
I can't go back to that again. That hurts so bad. 0 fantasy points in the fantasy semifinals, and he's not even 100%. He came into the game with a wrist injury and aggravated that during the game.